Hello, sir. Very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us here on First Take. I want to begin with the big one. RBI yesterday had increased risk weights on unsecured loans for both banks and NBFCs. I think what was more surprising for the street was the fact that they have increased risk weights for the lending by banks to NBFCs as well. Now, I think even if we look at how the banking pack is doing this morning, it opened gap down. Nifty bank is below 44,000 mark. So all in all, a very big negative news flow for the banking pack, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say that markets will look at how this actually plays out, because this is more from the unsecured lending perspective for the NBFC. So that would have an impact, and that's what we are seeing. Even if we look at the benchmark Nifty, it did open with a down gap, but there was a pullback which has happened. And if we look at Bank Nifty anyways wasn't as strong, because if we go back and look at the charts for quite many days, so Nifty is trading at its recent highs, means the highs that it had made last week and currently also, and this week also. But Bank Nifty has been trading over the last few trading sessions. So that clearly tells me that there is some concern, and also what it tells me is that it would be more stock specific. There would be some stocks that might be impacted, but how much is the impact going to be? That's one thing that we'll have to look out for. Because if you look in the banking space today, we see that there's some correction in IDFC, with then Axis, SBI, and all that. We're seeing some sort of minor correction, but overall there's not much of a reaction, because if you look at IndusInd, Kotak, so they are there in green, and some of the banks are marginally in the red. So we'll have to watch out as to how this plays out for these banks, and primarily for the NBFCs on the non-secured part. As far as Bank Nifty is concerned, I would say Bank Nifty it has been, I think, taking this into stride, because that's what being reflected on the charts per se. And on the upside, the recent highs that Bank Nifty had made, so somewhere around 44,400. So that was made on 15th November. So that's a zone of resistance for Bank Nifty on the upside. So that's a level to watch out for. Once it takes that out, then we can say that more of the news flows and all that, which has really come off recently, that's more or less been factored.
Now, RBI's directive aside, between the PSU banking space and the private banking space, at this point in time, what do you prefer? Because we are seeing once again a pickup in the private banking pack, and you, along with other experts, have indicated that valuations are looking perhaps attractive.
Yeah, I would say if you look at the private banking space, then in that case, we are seeing Axis is more or less now consolidating. So there's a loss of a trend there. And if I look at other private sector banks, so HDFC Bank, what we are seeing is that it's more or less now trying to form a bottom. So it's not yet formed a bottom. So that's a level for HDFC, somewhere around, I would say, any correction towards, because currently it's around 1500 odd levels. So any further correction in HDFC, that could be a buying opportunity. So maybe a 2-3% correction in HDFC can be looked as an opportunity. Apart from that, ICICI is now seeming to have formed a bottom. So because it has got very strong support coming on the 900 levels, currently it's around 934 odd levels. It has been consolidating for quite some time. So once it starts, ICICI starts sustaining above the 950 mark, then we could expect an upside towards the 1000 mark. So this is one on the private sector that we can look at. Apart from that, IDFC, what we are seeing, IDFC First Bank, we saw a significant rally. Now it's in a more or less a consolidation phase. So we could witness some choppy trading sessions here between, I would say, 90, 92 on the upside and 80 on the downside. So any correction in the stock towards 80 odd levels, 78, 80 odd levels could be a good buying opportunity from a short-term perspective as well.
Mr. Deo, any view on Yes Bank? I mean, the stock has rallied by about 30% in November alone. I think one of the reasons why it rallied was that, it has received 120 crore from the NPA portfolio of JC Flower. But I mean, the kind of exuberance that we are seeing, Do you expect the stock to perhaps break out of those shackles of around 20 to 24 rupees that we have seen in the last 2-3 years?
See, if you look at Yes Bank, actually, we don't track Yes Bank either from a fundamental or a technical perspective. But since you asked the question, I'll answer that. What we see in Yes Bank is that you rightly said that 20, because if you go back in time, so somewhere in December 22, it had made a high of 24.75. And from there, it had corrected all the way to 14, and it was trading around 14 odd levels, and now it's back at 20. So if you ask me purely from a technical perspective, the bank seems to have formed a very strong bottom on the downside. And also what we are seeing is the last few couple of weeks, I would say 2 weeks to be precise, there's an increase in volumes as well. So that reflects that there is some definite buying interest which is coming into the stock. But as I said earlier, 24, 25, that's going to be a level for stiff resistance for the stock. So one needs to be, before trading in the stock, one needs to be slightly clear as to there could be risks associated in terms of volatility, because it could be more of news driven as well. So that's one thing one needs to keep into account. But as I said, technically 24, 25 is a zone of resistance for the stock.
Now, sir, another sector, at least that is buzzing, is the IT pack. Phenomenal returns in the last 2-3 days. I think it's up almost 5.5 to 6% or so. Even the bellwethers are now participating. Can you, we have been talking about sector rotation. Can the IT pack take the leadership role perhaps in the next, in the near term?
So if we look at the Nifty IT index, because that will give us a good clue and idea. So if you look at the Nifty IT, so currently it's around 32,300 odd levels. And we did see that this week Nifty IT has gained around almost 4.5%. However, what we see on the long-term charts, if I look at the monthly charts, so somewhere Nifty IT has got very strong resistance. So coming around the current level, so somewhere around the exact level of resistance would be around 32,800, 33,000 levels. And so that's a level to watch out for. Yeah, overall, short-term perspective, intermediate-term perspective, we did see a bounce back. So whether this bounce back is here to stay, we'll have to watch out if these levels are taken out, and that would signify that the trend has changed from a long-term perspective as well. Otherwise, what we could say that it could be more of some short-term rally which we are witnessing till the time we don't see Nifty IT sustaining above the 33,000 levels. Talking about specific stocks, if you ask me in the Nifty, in the IT space, yeah, some of the stocks have done phenomenally well. If we look at, for example, HCL Technologies, so this stock has broken out of a consolidation zone. Earlier, it was unable to breach the 1300 mark. Currently, it's trading above that level. It's strong on the long-term charts. So there is a possibility that the stock could rally further towards 1350, because that's going to be a level of resistance for the stock. If I look at some other stocks in the IT space, so from that perspective, TCS, we have seen some good pullback, which is happening in the stock currently on 3,500 levels. So this has always been a slow mover, and what we've seen is that anywhere between, I've spoken earlier also, that anywhere between 3,300, 3,350, that's a very good level or zone of support for TCS. So on the upside, there's always a 8 to 10% opportunity on TCS from a short-term perspective. So now what we are seeing, the stock trading above the 3,500 level, so it has a potential to rally. Once it starts sustaining on the 3,500 level, we could see the stock rally towards the 3,600 level. So this is again one stock which from the large pack, which seems to be good. And the last one I would like to talk about is Coforge. This is one stock from the IT space which was in for consolidation. It did correct from its recent highs. So again, it's meeting with a double top. So if I look on the chart, so somewhere we are seeing that Coforge had made a high of 57.62 in September of this year, and again today's high is 57.50 roughly. So that tells me that that's a level to watch out for. Volumes, how the volumes play out today, and whether it's able to sustain above the 57.50 levels, that would decide whether the stock is in for a significant rally or the stock would witness profit booking at the levels.
All right. And before we let you go, sir, a quick word on foreign institutional investors. In the last couple of sessions, they have turned net buyers, and they have bought equities nearly worth 1,500 crores. Is this the pivot that we were hoping for? And can FII buying perhaps drive the markets to a new record high from here on?
Yeah, I would say, see, what happens is that what we've seen is that FIIs had been continuously selling over the last many months. So in spite of that, or despite that, the markets, did correct, but they bounced back. So that shows the resilience of the Indian economy and the markets in general. Also, what we saw was the DIIs have been very active, and also we see the retail participation there in the form of SIP and others. So yes, if the FIIs, it's too early to say, but if this trend continues, because the trend will have to will look for at least a week to a fortnight, the regular trend. If that continues to be positive, then definitely that would add on more to the support for the market, because the inflows would increase. So that's one. Secondly, we'll have to watch out for, because FIIs, if you look at they have a clear-cut mandate where to invest. So they wouldn't be investing in very small caps, per se. I would say more on large caps and mid cap sort of sector. So yeah, if that happens, then we could see a significant up move as well, provided we see a big inflow on a consistent basis coming from the FIIs.
All right, that's Aamar Singh for you. Sir, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us here on First Take.
Thank you for having me.